I also like to say, just ad-libbing a little bit from the agenda here, is that I was reading this morning about the trial in Egypt of the journalists on trial there, and it's just every day you see something around the world which reminds you that the press is far from free everywhere. They actually, according to the article, the prosecutor put up the video that they were being charged from, and it wasn't actually a video; it was just a canned video, and so they didn't even have the video that they were being charged with their crime for. So Egypt obviously has a long way to go, as well as some other places that we're working hard in. So anyway, as some of you know too well, our broadcast family has had a tragic loss since our last meeting. On March 22nd, while on his way to work, Dr. Mohammed Bdaiwi Owaid Al-Shammari, Baghdad bureau chief of RFE-RL's Radio Free Iraq, was shot and killed at a security checkpoint near his office. This is a profound loss for RFE-RL and the community of independent media in Iraq, and for all of us as well. We extend our condolences to Al-Shammari's family, friends, and colleagues. The shooter in this case has been remanded to Iraq's Central Criminal Court for trial on murder charges. And I'd like to pause right now for a moment of silence in remembrance of Dr. Al-Shammari. Thank you, everybody. The BBG continually monitors threats to media freedom and to our journalists in particular, and this board makes a point at each meeting of recognizing the threats at each of our public meetings. We're becoming increasingly concerned about the situation in and around the Ukraine, and we're going to spend some time, as we talked about, on that later on this morning. Reporters from both VOA and RFE-RL have faced violence and threats in the course of their work. On March 1st, an RFE-RL correspondent was beaten and forced to kneel and kiss a Russian flag during a demonstration in Kharkiv, Ukraine. On March 17, RFE-RL Ukrainian service journalist Lev Kostek was leaving a reporting assignment at a Ukrainian military base in Crimea when he was approached by unidentified uniformed gunmen who handcuffed him, put a bag on his head, and forced him into the backseat of a car, and then drove him some distance to a field and deposited him there. Stek was not injured, but he was told not to return to Crimea again. On March 21, an RFE-RL journalist was severely beaten in Crimea by uniformed Russian soldiers, but is now safe. On March 22nd, VOA correspondent Daniel Scharf and local cameramen were accosted and assaulted by Russian forces in Crimea as they tried to cover a standoff in a military base. The Russian troops seized VOA's camera equipment and knocked the cameraman to the ground. And on March 23rd, several shots were fired into the apartment of an RFE-RL Ukrainian service journalist in Kyiv, Ukraine. Police are investigating this incident. And VOA stringer Jamie Detmer, who has been reporting for VOA from eastern Ukraine, has received anonymous phone messages warning that he would be killed. We strongly, as a board, condemn some such aggressive and lawless acts against our journalists. And as a board, we call for the end to this interference with the work of our journalists and for all parties involved to respect Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which proclaims everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek and receive and impart information and ideas throughout any media and regardless of frontiers. Unfortunately, we've also seen troubling incidents in other countries within our broadcast regions. The Russian Information Agency has cut off all remaining radio transmissions by U.S. international media in Russia. This is a step in the wrong direction, continuing on a path that Russia has trod under Vladimir Putin's leadership for several years, restricting free speech, a fundamental value shared by many countries around the world. VOA's South Sudan project bureau chief was picked up and detained for questioning by the national security officers of the South Sudan government. After 5.5 hours of questioning, he was released following a visit by a U.S. Embassy consular official to the National Security Services Office. Another South Sudan VOA reporter was detained by security forces, questioned about his work, and told that he cannot do any additional reporting without first getting their permission. A VOA stringer in Herat was detained by the campaign staff of a leading Afghan presidential candidate on March 11. The stringer was released about an hour later after local journalists intervened on his behalf. Adnan Khan, a VOA Diwa reporter in the Waziristan region of Pakistan, received a phone call on March 14 from someone who identified himself as Azam Tariq, a member of the Pakistani Taliban. The caller accused Adnan of working for spy agencies and warned him to stop reporting on the region, or he should be prepared to be tried by a Taliban court that would punish him for his reporting. Sorry about this long list, but obviously the world's getting worse here a bit. Tapdig Faraduglu, a stringer for VOA's Azerbaijani service, was assaulted on February 21 while covering a student demonstration in Baku. The chief of the security force at Baku State University struck him and kicked him in an attempt to get him to stop recording video of security personnel attacking the demonstrators. The board's troubled by these attempts to stifle independent press and calls on local authorities to do more to support and protect all working journalists. And we cannot forget that Al-Hurra's Bashar Fahmy remains missing in Syria following an August 2012 reporting trip to Aleppo. As ever, I call for anyone with information about Bashar's whereabouts or well-being to come forward. I think this is a good tradition that we do at the beginning of the meetings, and you'd hope as the world becomes more free and press becomes more free, this list would become shorter. As you can see from the remarks this morning, unfortunately, the list is becoming longer, and particularly the events in Ukraine and Russia are troubling to the board and should be troubling to everybody.